But the one thing that won't change, going back to Q2, if you'll, is we will always have a lot of cash on hand. And when I say cash, I don't mean commercial paper. When 2008 and 2009 financial panic came along, we didn't own anybody's commercial paper. We didn't have money market funds. We have treasury bills. And as I may get into a little later, I'll explain to you why. We believe in having cash. And there have been a few times in history, and will be more times in history, where if you don't have it, you don't get to play the next day. I mean, it's just it's like oxygen. It's there all the time, but if it disappears for a few minutes, it's all over. So our cash was down on March 31st because, as you saw, we spent that large sum there in that brief period during the quarter, $40 billion. We've committed to buy Allegheny Corp for something over $11 billion, but we will always have a lot of cash. We don't. Some of our companies have bank lines. I don't know why they have the bank lines. We're better than the banks, and we'll give them the money if they need it. But the local bankers have been calling on them, and they need something to do. Everybody else has bank lines, so it's harmless. But there's no reason for any of our subsidiaries to have bank lines. Berkshire is stronger than the banks that they're. I didn't hear exactly what I don't know whether that was a banker screaming or. I don't really like to torture. I don't like to torture anybody. I mean, but and I'm all for banks, and we'll talk about that a little later. In fact, we might even talk about it right now, just for a minute. Money's kind of an interesting thing. People seem to like to talk to me about it. I mean, they don't ask me how to dance or anything like that, but they do ask about money. And so, if we'll put up 20-1, it's a photo of a $20 bill, and it says at the top, Federal Reserve notes. Now, Federal Reserve note, we've done all kinds of things with money in this country. It's amazing, country only a couple hundred years old, the number of different experiments we've made with banks and everything. But we finally just decided to let the Federal Reserve do the issuing of money. And down in the lower left-hand corner, incidentally, I think Rosie Rios, who signed this note, I think she signed more U.S. currency than any other person in history. So if you see Rosie, you cozy up to her. I mean, this is a woman that has issued a lot of currency. But it says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and that makes it money. You can go into our candy store, and if you offer us enough bushels of wheat, we'll probably give you a box of candy. But money is the only thing that the IRS is going to take from you. You can offer them all kinds of. You can offer them paintings. You can offer them all whatever. But this is what settles debts in the United States. And I thought that you'll hear a lot about various kinds of money. This is the only kind of money you're going to see, in my opinion, throughout your lifetime, or even throughout Charlie's lifetime. I mean, this is, it's very interesting because it just says that settle all legal tender for all debts, public and private, and nothing else says that, except I thought you might be interested in seeing another $20 bill, and this one I own. And on that, it's got the same guy's picture, Andrew Jackson, and everything. And that's a $20 bill. And that $20 bill was issued during my lifetime. And it was done by a bank that Berkshire ended up owning. So you'll see the Illinois National Bank in Buster Rockford. And we bought that bank back in 1969. And if you look down at the bottom of that one, it's signed by a fellow named Eugene Abegg. And we bought it from Eugene Abegg. So we still have some $20 bills. They came in sheets, and we can cut them out like paper dolls. And they're our money. The Illinois National Bank issued money. But just remember, the United States government, in effect, said that this became exchangeable for lawful money of the United States. That's what money is. It may turn out that it becomes worth dramatically less in purchasing power. It can become almost like paper money, as it has in many countries. But that is all. When people tell you that they're issuing new forms of money, this is the only thing that will pay bills under some circumstances. And there were days, a few days in 2008, and we came very close to having a repeat in March 2020. And we had plenty of money on March 20th. But we were not very, very far away from having something that might have been a repeat of 2008 or even worse. And we have a bookstore here, but the Bookworm, that's in the other room, and they've got a book called $1 Trillion Triage. And for those of you who actually like to read about this sort of thing, it's a marvelous account of what took place day by day with the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. And believe me, if the Federal Reserve hadn't done what they did, at least in my view, in a very, very, very short period of time, things could have stopped. And I tipped my hat a couple years ago to Jay Powell for acting as he did. You have to act with speed. I mean, in the old days when you had runs on banks, back in the 19th century, a line formed, and the bank would go broke. But the fellow would pay out as slowly as possible, hoping something would happen. A Wells Fargo truck or a stagecoach would pull up with a bunch of gold or something, and you'd sweet talk the people into the line dispersing. In Omaha, in August of 1931, 4 state banks, so-called state banks, they had in that day, they closed, and the national banks didn't. But they were all broke as of that day. No bank can pay off in one day all of its liabilities. But the Federal Reserve is the only one that's good at that time. But I will tell you this, Berkshire Hathaway will be there at that time. We run it on the basis that if things just behave slightly, if Frank Paulson, George W. Bush, I'm sorry, and Ben Bernanke, and a few people hadn't taken action, we were at that point where the line was formed, except it comes in electronic fund. They push buttons, and it's all over very fast if there's a run on a bank. If you ever buy a bank, and there's 2 banks in town, hire a few extras and have them go over and start standing in line at the other guy's bank. I mean, and there's only one problem with that. After a while, somebody will stand in front of your bank, and then both of you are gone. But the Federal Reserve is not gone. And the Federal Reserve in the United States can do whatever is necessary. They've got all kinds of rules about can do this or that and this and that. One time in the 1980s, Paul Volcker, who was a very honest man, said to me, and I said, what are the limits of what you can do? And he said, he was a very unusual guy and huge, looked out at me, said, we can do whatever we need to do. And that's true, and that's what happened in 2008 and 9, and that's what happened in 2020, and you hope it happens again next time. But we want Berkshire Hathaway to be there and in a position to operate when if the economy stops, and that can always happen. That can always happen. Some of those cheery words. Let's see if we. I think we can actually. Might be a good idea to start with some questions. As I said, we will have the questions alternate between CNBC, Becky Quick, and those are questions that have come in from shareholders, and they can be directed to any of the 4 of us up here, and then we will go alternate and go around the room here, and we've got the auditorium broken into 10 or 11 sections. Charlie and I one time figured out a form and said officers of the company broken down by age, and we just put all of us as an answer to that question. But we'll have it broken down by categories around here, and we'll keep alternating, and we will break for lunch at noon and reconvene at 1. So let's.
Please like and subscribe. Thank you.